Okay, I think we're organized. Good morning and welcome to UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. We are a group of spiritual freethinkers who gather to celebrate life, build community, and better the world. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I'm Karen Alvarez, your worship associate for this morning, and the service today will be led by our minister, the Reverend Cindy Terlazzo. Thank you to everyone on this morning's worship team, including music. It says Bill Mills, it's not, it's Scott. Can't remember your last name, but welcome, Scott. Today's service will be intergenerational, with children of all ages invited to stay for the full service and take a break in the wiggle zone as needed. I don't see any children, so that was just, for grown-ups.
You can use the wiggle zone if you need it.
Feel free to wiggle as needed. If this is your first visit, welcome. We invite you to sign the visitor's book in the entryway. And whether it's your first visit or your 1,000th, we are glad you came. This service is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel. We will plan on continuing with hybrid services, so you can join us each week here in person, on Zoom, or later on YouTube. To help us connect better with our friends watching from home, please turn around and give a wave to the camera. At the end of the service, we will invite our friends on Zoom to turn on their cameras and wave back. I have a few announcements to share with you today. To help make the most of our time together, event details can be found in the printed announcements in the back of the room or in your weekly email. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, please fill out a card on or near your chair. We invite you to bring them forward and place them in the basket after Scott rings the chimes and begins to play. You can also come forward to drop a pebble in the water if you have a joy or sorrow that you'd prefer not to share. Thank you to everyone who helped support our presence at the FLX Pride. It was a beautiful day of spreading love and building community. Coming up next month, we'll have opportunities to celebrate Rochester Pride the weekend of July 17th through 19th, including a parade on Saturday and joint worship service with First Unitarian and First Universalist on Sunday. That special combined service will be hosted at First Universalist at 10:30. We encourage you to take a field trip up to join in person, tune into their live stream link from home, or come here to watch it together. This will be our last regular service of the church year. Next week, we'll gather together to watch the Sunday worship service from the Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly, and the rest of the summer will be filled with simple Sunday services led by our members and friends. Thank you for everyone who signed up to lead. Are there any other announcements for the good of the community?
We ran out of coffee filters, so we have regular coffee, but not decaf this morning. I did start a kettle for tea. We have a nice selection if you are a decaf hot beverage drinker. And we didn't put the hymn words as slides, so if you're used to looking at the television to tell you what to sing, try to find a hymnal near you to see what the words are as we get to those hymns, because we will not have the slides during hymn time.
As we prepare to be fully together, I remind you to silence your phones and devices. We now enter a space of worship, and please, now is the time to bring forward any joys or sorrows, or to come up and drop a pebble. I invite you to join with me in our chalice lighting words. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Well, good morning, everyone. Summer is truly here. We can tell by the weather. We can tell by the many other things that people have to do on a Sunday morning. And before we start today's service, I want to share a couple of things that colleagues of mine have shared over the past month. As we look at the times in which we are living, we know that there are so many things that we could highlight, but I want to highlight these two things in particular as they tie into the service today. The first reflection is from Reverend Dan Schatz. This was in response to the Supreme Court's gutting of the Voting Rights Act. He said, "Some of you know the Voting Rights Act was passed in part because of the national outrage at lynchings in Selma of a UU minister named James Reeb. Another UU, Viola Liuzzo, also died during that march. We remember them along with Jimmy Lee Jackson, Jonathan Daniels, and so many others who lost their lives or suffered much harm because of their commitment to democracy and voting rights. Our UU values speak of inclusive democratic processes. The Voting Rights Act was, and for what's left of it, is the most effective and important tool we have to ensure that democracy is indeed inclusive. We certainly have our work to do to uphold our values and continue this work in this most precarious time." The second reflection was by a colleague, Reverend Liz Weber, and she was writing in response to the Christian nationalist rally that took place in D.C. a few weeks ago. They said that the rally that was held in D.C. was supported by the president and his administration, and we join Unitarian Universalists and other people of faith around the country to loudly voice our dissent. We decry the harm done by the usurping of Christian values for conservative political purposes. We remind those neighbors that Jesus taught us to love one another. We affirm that each person has the right to follow the religious or spiritual path where they find truth and meaning. And we affirm that religious pluralism, in fact, strengthens this country. May we all work towards deeper understanding and affirmation of one another. So thinking about those things, all of the things that are in these times, it asks us a lot to think about how we want to use our values to consider how we move forward in the world. So with all that as a preface, I now invite you into worship with the words of David A. Miller. Today in UU congregations all over the world, people will gather in an effort to live into, as best as we can, what we profess about placing love at the center of all that we do. What a magnificent challenge. We are currently living in times baiting us to not love. The social and political atmosphere in which we travel insidiously tempts us to find fault, place blame, point fingers, and increase that which can tear us apart. And yet, we practice a faith, often imperfectly, because after all, we are human, but we continue to practice a faith where we are called to answer the question, what is the most loving thing that I can do right now? What an astounding challenge. What an unbelievably vital attempt. What an incredibly needed beacon for the future of us all. So, as we gather today to support each other in living out this mission, may the light of our flaming chalice breathe life and love into every one of our congregations and into those who, by the very nature of this calling, have this great and wonderful opportunity to live into love in these days filled with so many struggles and so much possibility. As we enter into worship together, may we truly be finding love at the center of all that we do. And now, I think what comes up next is our opening hymn, which is hymn number 159. This is my song, Stand in Body and or Spirit. 159. In the great hymnal. So the Time for All Ages today is a story that is a true story, and it's one that I find really inspiring. So this was a telling put together by Reverend Karen G. Johnston, and she says, this true story comes to us from John Lewis. He was a great leader in this nation who died in 2020. Many people were sad to lose him and were thankful for all that he has done to bring about justice in this nation. He lived a long and full life. He asked of himself and is asking of all of us to show up for justice, to do what we can, and just a little bit more to make sure that there is fairness in our country. Now, John Lewis grew up in a large family, and he would spend time with his aunts and uncles, with his siblings and cousins. There were many children in the neighborhood, and they would play together. Mr. Lewis tells about a time when he was playing outside his Aunt Savannah's house with about 14 other children. So picture this. When a storm, a really big storm arrived, the kind of storm that made him very afraid. Now, I'm going to tell the story from his perspective, so it's like he's going to be talking. So when I say I, it really means Mr. John Lewis. Aunt Savannah was the only adult around, and as the sky blackened and the wind grew stronger, she herded us all inside. Now, her house was not the biggest place around, and it seemed even smaller with so many children squeezed inside. Small and surprisingly quiet. All of the shouting and laughter that had been going on earlier outside had stopped. The wind was howling now, and the house was starting to shake. We were scared. Even Aunt Savannah was scared. And then it got worse. Now the house was beginning to sway. The wood plank flooring beneath us began to bend. And then a corner of the room started lifting up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. None of us could. This storm was actually pulling the house toward the sky with us in it. That was when Aunt Savannah told us to clasp hands, line up and hold hands, she said, and we did as we were told. Then she had us walk as a group toward the corner of the room that was rising. From the kitchen to the front of the house, we walked. The wind screaming outside, sheets of rain beating on the tin roof. Then we walked back in the other direction as another end of the house began to lift up. And this is true. And so it went, back and forth, 15 children walking with the wind, holding that trembling house down with the weight of our small bodies. Can you imagine what that must have been like inside that house? Afraid that it might fall apart from the destructive force of the wind and the rain, from the whole storm? Now, I'm really glad that John Lewis wasn't alone, that he was there with his friends and family, and I'm so glad that they figured out a way to work together. When John Lewis was much older and was writing down the story of his whole astounding life, he wrote these words. More than half a century has passed since that day, and it has struck me more than once over those many years that our society is not unlike the children in that house. Rocked again and again by the winds of one storm or another, the walls around us seeming at times as if they might fly apart. It seemed that way in the 1960s at the height of the civil rights movement, when America itself felt as if it might burst at the seams. So much tension, so many storms, but the people of conscience never left the house. They never ran away, they stayed, they came together, and they did the best that they could, clasping hands and moving toward the corner of the house that was the weakest. And then another corner would lift, and we would go there. And eventually, inevitably, the storm would settle, and the house would stand still. But we knew another storm would come, and we would have to do it all over again. And we did. And we still do. All of us, you and I, children holding hands, walking with the wind. So it just seems to be, we're in another one of those storms, and let's just keep walking together, clasping hands, doing what we can. One of the ways we do what we can is to gather together in community and support the work that this beautiful congregation does. So at this point, we ask for your generosity as we take the offering.
Now is the time in our service to join together into the spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts of both time and money support our church and its work. Each week, we would like to spotlight a group or committee and thank them for their gift of time. This week, the group is the designated closers and everyone who helps out with that process. People who are interested in finding out more can contact Carrie Teague. 1/4 of our collection plate for the blessed blooming season will go to our service partner, Family Promise of Ontario County, who empowering families threatened with or experiencing homelessness to achieve sustainable independence through a community-based response, and are working with their partners to open Ontario County's first ever homeless shelter for families. You can give to this morning's offering by placing cash or a check into the basket or by one of the options on the screen. Please make a note that your gift is intended for today's offering. We now gratefully accept the offering.
One of the delights of a congregation, of any community, is being able to share ourselves with one another. And so we carve out this ritual of the sharing of joys and sorrows. And the first joy is to recognize that it's time to change the season wheel. We are now in summer. So here we go. Yay! It's official now. Okay. We have a joy for a trip to the Adirondacks with family. Karen says, congratulations to my doctor daughter, Andrea Jacoby. So congratulations, yay. Drew says he is now a septuagenarian, so yay. We have another joy. It's nice to have Scott back with us to play music for the summer. Yay! Laura Wink, her son Oliver and daughter-in-law Lauren welcomed a baby girl on Wednesday, Violet Audrey Love. Oh, what a beautiful name. All are doing well in sunny California, so another yay! Elliot says that summer rec starts this week, yay! And that his cousins came from North Carolina to visit. So I think we've got lots of yays all around. Yay! So I know that there are things that are held within our hearts that have not been shared this morning. They might be joys, they might be things that are more tender. So this is an invitation to each of you to pay attention and share them when it feels right, because the sharing of what really is true in our lives is a really beautiful and sacred thing. I invite you now to settle in to a time of meditation, of prayer, and reflection with the words of D.L. Helfner. Spirit of all that moves among us and through us, help us to let love lead. Help us to recognize that polarization can also be understood as passion to build something better that holds all of us at the center. Helps us to imagine and to foster a world in which we listen more than we talk, where our priority is to learn as much as we teach, a world in which we find ways to connect across the chasms of difference, making space for revelation to emerge. Spirit of love, help us to turn toward love with the world, with each other, with ourselves, all the same thing at its core. Let us extend grace within our movements and between our movements, less sure, more curious, wondering together what is possible. Spirit of all that is open and hopeful, guide us in building a larger tent, not solely Democratic or Republican, independent or uncommitted. Let us lean to and learn from our ancestors, from generational pain and generational survival, the movement of generations building across difference, something better, larger, more encompassing that can hold us all. Let us not just be flags, potent though they are in declaring our beliefs, and yet impending our ability to recognize humanity across differences. Spirit of hope, spirit of all that is yet possible, lead us away from the false separation that the only truth is ours, that anything less is incomplete. Lead us instead into the discomfort of learning from youth, from young adults, activists, elders, those we cherish, those we find wanting. Lead us to the love that holds us all and is with us always, the love that can help us through the messy and necessary life-altering work of building movements across beliefs, across differences, for change that can endure. And may it be so. Let's just take a moment to settle into that. Breathing in, breathing out. Now,
So I'm going to read Organizing as a Spiritual Practice by Antoinette Holloman, and it starts off with a quote, "Organizers are very necessary, but that isn't and can't be the only role in the movement." And that's by Adrienne Marie Brown. Like many congregations, mine believed you could hand its social justice work to one committed person, As strange as that seemed to me, I would end up being that default justice human, a proxy for good deeds in the world. As social justice chair at my congregation, I try to convince people, often with frustration, that it was our collective duty to work for a better future. I'd been a Unitarian Universalist for 10 years before I connected my activism and my faith. I believed that working for justice was my responsibility and would bristle when others didn't take the same approach. When a group of my UU friends came together to worship outside of my congregation, though, I figured out that we approached our spiritual needs in very different ways, and it didn't have to be on the front line. Today, I approach organizing as my primary spiritual practice. My prayers are the emails I send to start a relationship with someone. My meditations are the calls I receive from community members about how they can show up better or at all. The sacred flame that I carry illuminates the world so many of us dream of, a sanctuary for everyone. Organizing as a UU is not my only spiritual practice, but it soothes my soul in a way that no walk in a labyrinth ever has. I cannot be separated from how I worship, both as an individual and in my community congregation. The work of justice can't be carried out by one person, or even a few diverse people. Organizers have never changed the world without groups of people who trusted them to hold that future imagining. When we do social justice work, we're always a team. Democracy is all of us, together. I don't believe that only a few people make real change and the rest of us, or you, maybe, are sitting on the sidelines in the next pew over. We all have a place within our movement of love at the center. I believe that the act of entering a congregation is its own form of justice. Organizers need people who can bring snacks, give rides, build spreadsheets, volunteer song leading, and much, much more. Your gifts are what you bring about our collective liberation. Your voice, big or small, is how we grow democracy together.
So I typically write my own sermons, but I came across this piece written by the amazing Lutheran minister Nadia Bolz-Weber, and I found that she expressed some things that I had been wrestling with regarding the relationship between church and state, the relationship between how our faith values inform us to show up in the world and in the public square. So these are Nadia Bolz-Weber's words. Yesterday, I spent a good hour and a half steaming the creases out of an American flag. I slowly moved our cheap steamer over each inch of the 5x9 cotton, removing its creases and thinking of my father, and the 23 years he left for work each morning in his crisp blue uniform. While proud of his military career and maintaining great affection for a childhood spent on Air Force bases, I'm not normally an American flag kind of girl. So yesterday I was surprised by how very beautiful I found it as a physical object in my hands and on our dining room table. The sturdy fabric, the rich, saturated crimson and blue, the perfect embroidered stars. It was beautiful. But if I see a pickup truck with American flags flying behind its cab while belching diesel fumes into the street, I do not think that that person has a commitment to liberty and justice for all. I think there are so many people in my life who would not feel safe around that person. Because the distance between what I think this flag should represent, things like a continually unfurling commitment to the dignity of all, the protection from tyranny for both our citizens and our allies, and a government of the people and by the people, because I think that that's what our flag should mean, rather than how it is so often used to hide behind the anxious and delusional so-called supremacy of a single race and a single religion, the contraction of rights, a cultish tyranny pawned off as patriotism. All of this makes it difficult to claim this flag, this symbol, as my own. But I do love my country, damn it. I love that we set aside the most beautiful parts of this place to belong to all of us. Our states and national parks. I love how many languages we speak, how many places we come from, how many ways we pray. I love that there are truths in the U.S. Constitution that even those who penned it could not possibly have understood the full power of. I want to think of these things when I see the Stars and Stripes. I want to think of Sojourner Truth and Betty Sorkin, Jimmy Carter and Dolly Parton, Amelia Earhart and Chita Rivera. I'm exhausted by seeing Old Glory and thinking instead of those who celebrate removing any mention of the Tuskegee Airmen from the Smithsonian's website. I want to take back my country's flag. And the term patriot, while we're at it, why can it not be considered a form of patriotism to believe so deeply in what the United States of America has always said it is about, that we refuse to settle for less, that we refuse to abandon this country to those who support policies based in little more than small-mindedness and self-interest? And maybe this is why I keep thinking about interpretation, about who gets to say what a symbol means, about who benefits from calling their reading the only faithful one. I'm not a terribly sophisticated political thinker, and I do not make a practice of writing about that part of my life. Others are far more skilled and informed than I am. Not to mention, I am prone to a wee bit of blinding rage, which is no good for anybody, especially me. So I try to stay in my lane. But my lane as a minister and this conversation overlap in this way. Constitutional originalism, the belief that the most faithful way to interpret the Constitution is to try to discern what the framers intended it to mean, feels eerily similar to the belief that the most faithful way to interpret the Bible is to say, God wrote it. So we should take every contradictory word of it literally through a so-called plain reading. I'm equally cynical about both, since the loudest proponents of these views have always been those who just so happen to benefit the most from those particular interpretations. Both approaches present themselves as simply taking the text seriously, but in practice, both can smuggle ideology in through the back door by pretending interpretation is not interpretation, and they get to hide behind these texts and say, oh, don't be mad at me, this is what the framers, this is what God says. And then, as anyone who has studied history can attest, atrocities easily ensue. But texts do not act by themselves, people interpret them. And when interpreters privilege the authority of dead men over the dignity of living people, the result is often that the vulnerable pay the price while the powerful call it faithfulness. Not to mention that once a reading is labeled plain or original, dissent can be framed not just as disagreement, but as rebellion against God, law, order, or reality itself. That rhetorical move gives enormous cover to existing power. But I do dissent. The biblical text, when treated as a living word and not simply as a dead policy manual, allows meaning, comfort, and wisdom to unfold in both old and new ways for each community that studies it. It allows the Bible to surprise us, live in us, even interpret us. Some may be tempted to walk away from the Bible altogether, and I understand why, I do. But I beg you to reconsider, because as I've said before, Scripture and theology are too potent to be left in the hands of those who only use them to justify their dominance over other people. We cannot cede any scriptures to them. And perhaps the same can be said of the symbols and founding documents of this country. The cost of rejecting them feels too high when reimagining, redefining, and reclaiming are still available to us. This last December, for his 83rd birthday, I gave my father a leather-bound copy of the U.S. Constitution and other foundational documents, inaugural addresses, Federalist Papers, speeches by Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth, and for some reason, the Constitution of the New York Knickerbockers Baseball Club. He got a little teary, held it to his chest, and said, "Thank you." Maybe he understood something I am only now trying to say out loud, that love of country is not the same thing as uncritical loyalty. Sometimes it looks more like grief, sometimes more like argument, sometimes more like refusing to let a beautiful thing be used to bless our worst instincts. So yesterday, I patiently steamed the creases from an American flag and folded it into its perfect blue triangle on my dining room table, allowing myself to be affected by the beauty of this object before it was handed to my mother at my father's memorial service. And so here I am, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, feeling unexpectedly tender toward a piece of folded cotton on my table, and still unwilling to surrender what it could mean. Maybe that too is a form of patriotism and faith. To hold something gently, grieve what has been done in its name, and still refuse to give up on what it could yet mean. So as we go out into the world in these next months, we know that there are forces at work trying to do everything to make it very difficult to vote. And I believe that that still is one of the most important things that we can do now. So I urge all of you to find whatever your place is in this organization of bringing justice into this life of ours, to find your place and do it. You know, reach out to the polling places, talk to your neighbors, canvass. Let's do what we can to ensure a free and fair election this year. And now, let's just have a little bit of music as we reflect on all of what has been shared. As we get ready to move into this beautiful day, I offer you these closing words by Shari Woodbury. Let us continue to grow as citizens of our communities, our nation, and our world. Let us work to build the common good for ourselves and the generations to come. Go forth in peace, return again in love. Our closing hymn today is hymn number 121 in the gray hymnal, We'll Build a Land. You're invited to stand in or rise in body and or spirit.
If you are joining us on Zoom today, now is the time to turn on your camera if you would like to wave goodbye. Please join me in our words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Go enjoy this beautiful day.